We're back out here at the Little Lake, and today we're talking about how this guy right here can be one of the most effective finesse presentations in winter. Stick around and I'll show you all about it. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And you know, when you think of winter, you generally think of slowing things down. Winter fishing is finesse fishing. Half as fast, twice as long. That's generally the rule of thumb, and it's a lot of things that I like to go by. When I'm fishing something like a jig or a Texas rig or even a jerkbait, I like to go half as fast as I normally do, and when I pause, I'm waiting twice as long before I start things back up. It's an effective rule that has caught me many, many fish. But in the wintertime, there's also an effective finesse style of fishing that not many anglers are aware of, and that is you can use a lipless crank, one of these guys right here. And it helps if you have something that mimics the old Strike King red-eye shad. And that's important. That body shape is important, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But we're going to take this, and I'm going to teach you how to use it for a finesse style presentation. It does require a little bit of practice, but once you get that feel down and the cadence down and everything gets working right, you'll find that it's extremely effective at catching those lethargic fish. What we're going to do is we're going to hold this little guy in place and flip it on its side, back and forth in place. Those rattles are going to do a lot of work for us, but it's just basically going to mimic a shad that's in its death throes. We're going to have it where it's just flipping back and forth on side to side. I'm going to show you how to fish that, and we'll talk about why that's such an effective presentation. So let's head out over here to the water, and I'll show you exactly how I cast it out and exactly what the retrieves are. So let's get started. All right, we came to lake number 2 behind the cabins, and about the 3rd or 4th cast, this little guy. Nice little beautiful bass. Caught him on the Ozark Trails lipless crank, little $1.97 crankbait, and you can see he went after it. So let me go ahead and get the pliers, get the hook out of this guy's mouth, and get him back in the water. All right, little guy, let him go, let him grow, as they say. There he goes. All right, let's see if we can't get the next one. Okay, we are out here at the Little Lake. You can see gorgeous afternoon rolling into the evening. We've got our lipless crank tied on. I'm gonna cast it out there. I'm gonna let it sink. I'm gonna let it sink. I'm gonna let it sit. We're gonna watch that line, and when I know it's all the way on the bottom, I'm just gonna pick up on it and then let it sit. And then I'm just gonna pick up on it back and forth like this. And I'm gonna flip-flop it back in place. What's happening is that bait is flipping from side to side. And you can feel it when you've done it enough times. And what that does is that'll basically just flips that bait over from side to side, and you can feel it in place. And it is a finesse way of fishing a lipless crankbait. You can feel it coming up and over, side to side. It takes a little practice, but that's all you have to do is just do this with your rod. I'm going to show you. You kind of want to hold it a little high, like that, and then just up and over, just little pumps like that. And that rod is going to cause that bait to flip. And you're just essentially kicking that bait over from side to side. It's flipping from side to side. And that's essentially, you're using it as a finesse style presentation for a lipless crankbait. It's something that anglers have been doing they've been doing it for a few years, but not a lot of guys know about it. And in the wintertime, it's an exceptionally effective presentation. A lipless crankbait is one of the actual better baits to use in the wintertime. Again, let it sink. It's one of my favorite presentations to use in the wintertime. You want to wait till that bait sinks all the way. You can watch your line and you can see that far end, the end that's farthest away from you. When it stops coming toward you, then you know you've hit the bottom. Let it sink, and then just kind of pop that line up and down, pop that line. Lipless crankbaits are amazing in the wintertime. It is a great alternative to a jerkbait. And you're just flipping it nice and easy, up and over, up and over, up and over, getting that bait to flip from side to side to side, back and forth. And that's what we're doing. You can feel it. When you're doing it right, you don't ever really want those hooks to come up off of the bottom. And it mimics a shad or a bait fish or whatever, some type of bait fish that's in your waters. It mimics the dying actions, like whenever they're in the throes of death. And you can actually attract fish from quite a ways doing that. Again, we're going to do it one more time. We're going to throw it out there. We'll bomb it out there. Boy, I need to oil that reel. We're going to let it sink. We're going to let it sink, let it sink, let it sink. I mean, who ever heard of finesse fishing a lipless crank, right? And it's fluttering on its way down. It's fluttering and it's rattling. So that's part of the whole presentation. Let it flutter down, because it's going to flutter down. And then we're just going to pick up on it and let it fall. There are so many different ways that you could fish a lipless crank. You don't have to just chuck and wind. And the nature of how they're made makes them extremely versatile in the wintertime. They are a very useful tool, part of your toolbox in the wintertime. So don't ever sleep on the lipless crank. That's just one retrieve that we can do. We don't have to, again, we don't have to just chuck and wind, chuck and wind, chuck and wind. There is another retrieve that's also highly effective. Again, I'm fishing a lot of vegetation here. And it still works for the vegetation. Chuck it out there, right? And then you kind of stroke it like you would a jig. Let it go down, and then pop it up. Let it go down, and then pop it up. Let it go down, pop it up. This is another great way to trigger those strikes from those lethargic fish. Very similar to how you would fish a jig. Yes, you can just chuck and wind and chuck and wind. Let it hit, let it sink, let it flutter. Don't be afraid to let it go all the way down to the bottom. That's one of the main keys, right? And then once you've seen that it's all the way down at the bottom, pick up on it. And then pick up on it and let it settle back down. Then pick up on it again and then let it settle back down. And then pick up on it again and let it settle back down. And you can do this, it doesn't matter. You can do this and it doesn't matter if you're in the boat or if you are fishing like I am from the bank today. It's extremely effective. And you can feel it as you're bringing it up. You know, you can even give it a good hard rip if you wanted to. But that's one of the things about the versatility. But that's one of the things about the versatility of a crankbait. The best baits in your tackle box are going to be the ones that are versatile. The ones that you can get more than one way of presenting them. Cast it out over there. And we can even mix it up, right? We can let it fall all the way, let it flutter down. We can let it fall and flutter down all the way. And then we can hold it in place, back and forth, and then we can pick up on it, right? And then we can hold it in place, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then pick up on it. Vary your presentations. Remember, nature is not a constant straight line. Things in nature rarely move in constant straight lines. They vary. They are often all over the place. This works in many different types of fisheries. It works in many different types of situations. I mean, I'm fishing through grass pretty good here. You know, like I said, back and forth, and back and forth. You want to ever so gentle, right? Like the old Bob Ross would say, 2 hairs and some air. That's all you want to put on that bait whenever you're trying to flip it, one way or the other. And that's going to be your main retrieves, right? Let it sink down. Again, we're going to let it sink down until we know it's on the bottom. Let it flutter down, let it flutter down. And we're going to just kind of spin it in place a little bit. Just real easy, real easy. You notice my line, I'm not really bringing it in to me any. I'm just flipping that bait up and down, back and forth. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to yank up on it, let it flutter back down, let it pause, yank up on it, let it flutter back down, let it pause, and then we're going to just kind of flip it over one side and then the other, one side and then the other, one side and then the other. And even if you're in an area where the waters are still pressured, you know, this is going to be something that not a lot of guys are going to be doing. You know, we can get bites. Nobody thinks of a lipless crank as a finesse bait, but it most definitely can be. You can definitely fish this thing like a finesse bait, and you can have a lot of success doing it. So it's presentations like that, like using a lipless crank in a way that nobody else thought of, but using it as a slower finesse presentation. Like we said before, half as fast, twice as long. When you're fishing baits in the wintertime, you're generally dragging them half as fast as you would any other time of the year, and your pauses are going to be twice as long. So the length of the pause that we put into these baits, these presentations, such as Texas rigs and jerk baits, can be 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or longer, depending on the water temperature, conditions, and things of that nature. But in general, we're slowing things way down. But that doesn't exclude the lipless crank. Don't sleep on these things. I know a lot of people right now are dragging a swim bait, and they're doing great with them. Slow rolling a swim bait or even slow rolling a spinner bait can be extremely effective this time of year. However, don't leave out a lipless crank. Whenever you flip-flop it on the bottom like that, it can be exceptionally effective. Just hold it in place and flip it from side to side and watch those fish inhale it. So there you have it, the lipless crankbait in the wintertime. It's not something that people ordinarily think about, but when used properly, they can be extremely effective. Try out these retrieves and see what happens. I think you'll like the results. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.